Bart's Friend Falls in Love is a really interesting episode of The Simpsons. This is the 23rd episode of the third season. It's directed by Jim Reardon. This aired originally in May 1992. And in this episode, Milhouse falls in love with a new girl at school. And I think it's pretty interesting that Milhouse is the one who falls in love, because at no point would I have expected him to start to like girls before Bart. So I think it was a pretty interesting idea that Milhouse is kind of reaching, or is on target to reach sexual maturity before Bart does. And it's interesting when we meet this girl, Samantha, and she's certainly a very likable character, but obviously to Bart, she's an antagonist, because Milhouse is now spending a lot of time with her and not a lot of time with Bart. And let's be honest, Milhouse takes liberties. He asks Bart if he can use the treehouse so he can have some alone time with Samantha. And I think this is definitely something a lot of people, probably around this age range, can relate to. Because usually, when a person of any age actually finds a new relationship, they do put a lot of time and effort into that relationship, and it can be quite easy to neglect your friends or your family because you're so excited about this new relationship and this new person in your life. And I guess there's a lesson in there for everybody that even if you're in a new relationship, maybe exercise a bit of balance and make sure that you don't neglect the people who have always been there for you. It's also interesting to see how Bart responds to this. Part of me wasn't sure how Bart would kind of handle this towards the end of the episode, and I'm not going to say what happens, but I think I was happy with the way the episode kind of developed and the way certain problems were resolved. Some of the resolutions were maybe not ideal in the real world, but certainly for the episode I felt quite satisfied. We also have a subplot here with Homer that I love, and Homer is supposed to be receiving a weight loss hypnosis tape, but he, unknown to him, accidentally receives a vocabulary building tape. And of course, when he is sleeping, this is teaching him vocabulary that is otherwise way beyond Homer's imagination. And he starts to talk very, very eloquently, very sophisticatedly. He is using words that nobody else in the Simpsons household understands, which, to be fair, is often the case as well, but usually on the other end of the spectrum. And I love it. I love hearing Homer come out with these big, fanciful words that are not really commonplace in daily vocabulary, and I really thoroughly enjoyed it. It's also a little bit poking fun at hypnosis, because the thing about hypnosis tapes is that usually if you listen to them while you sleep and you haven't listened to them while you're awake, they could really, in theory, be telling you absolutely anything. Of course, they would be found out quite quickly, because I'm sure, certainly if I were to listen to hypnosis while I sleep, which I definitely can't do. I've tried listening to ASMR while sleeping, and I just find that every time I wake up from sleep, my brain tries to tune in to what it's listening to, and that makes me more awake. Which is a shame, because I actually genuinely think hypnosis tapes could be quite useful. But if I had one, I would listen to it all the way through while awake first. But obviously, Homer doesn't do this. But I thought that was a really interesting subplot that's not too serious, doesn't change too much of the narrative, but I had a lot of fun with it. I think Bart's friend falls in love. I wonder why they didn't call it Milhouse Falls in Love. Most of the episodes do have a name of the Simpsons household in the title, so maybe they were just going for a bit of continuity, which is ironic because the Simpsons suck at continuity. They are terrible at continuity. But then you are meant to watch each episode in turn. They very rarely hark back to previous stories. The only time they ever really do is when it involves Mr. Burns, because Mr. Burns is constantly unaware of who Homer is, and Smithers is always reminding him of the many things that the Simpsons family has actually done for Mr. Burns. But aside from that, each episode can usually be watched completely in isolation, so it's not too big of a deal. Bart's Friend Falls in Love is a fun episode. It's not one that is overly serious, but there are some good messages in there. Personally, it's one that I'm a fan of.